Now, we are blessed to have with us the ambassador of Palestine to Kenya, the Palestinian Authority to Kenya, Hazem Shabat, is in the studio. Yesterday, we hosted his counterpart from Israel. Now, today, we want to hear from the other side, the Palestinian voice in the war in besieged Gaza. Good morning, Brother Ambassador.
Good morning.
Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Thank you very much, and happy Utamaduni Day.
Happy Utamaduni Day to you. That's the hot seat of the Situation Room. How does it feel?
Warm enough.
Good. City has the day's proverb.
Yes.
And this week's proverbs are from the United Republic of Tanzania.
Yes. This is a country that is within the Great Lakes region, okay? And it's the third largest country on the continent of Africa.
Wow.
Third largest.
By landmass.
By landmass, yes.
Tanzania is huge.
No, Tanzania is massive. It is massive. Right. Simple proverb for a holiday, something easy to understand, easy on the mind. Every bird flies with its own wings.
Every bird flies with its own wings. But Ambassador, when you hear this proverb, what's your interpretation of it?
I agree with it. Of course, every nation, every people build whatever civilization or culture or economy based on their own work. Definitely birds are helped with the winds and to be able to fly, but it's at the end of the day, it's their wings that carry them to achieve or go wherever they want to go. So I believe it's a very wise proverb in this way.
It's what they have within them and their own willingness and power.
Exactly that.
Very good. Let's start by defining this geographical area that we call Palestine. Where is it? Where is Palestine?
Palestine is the area that connects basically Africa to Asia. It's the first thing that you will have to pass through if you're walking out of Africa on land to Asia or any part anywhere else in the world. Palestine, of course, throughout history, it was a coherent geographical area that has been, of course, defined throughout history during the Ottoman Empire, during the Roman era, and even in the Bible, we find a clear reference to Palestine as a defined, well-defined area. Unfortunately, we shared the same history like Africa, in which we had colonizers and they had plans for our country and the solving their European problems at the expense of other nations, and the Jewish dilemma and the atrocities that were done in Europe were solved at the expense of our people, exporting that problem outside the European borders and creating a country for the European Jews. Because Palestine throughout history and until the establishment of Israel and even after until this day has its own Jewish community, Palestinian, Arab, Jewish community. Before the creation of Israel, there was no religious tensions that existed in Palestine. On the contrary, in the First World War and before, all immigrations that were happening from the wars and the atrocities that were going in Europe against the Jews and other minorities in Europe were migrating into Palestine, and that's why you will find Palestine very rich in ethnic composition. We have people with Armenian backgrounds, with Crimean backgrounds. We have people, of course, Jews have been migrating into Palestine for the past 100 years or so. So we have never been a place in which that was intolerant or inclusive to all the composition, because Palestine has always witnessed influx of different civilization throughout history. Crusades were there, Ottomans were there, Mongols were there, Pharaohs were the pharaonic times, Egyptian pharaonic times. Palestine was always invaded because of its strategic position. It became the crossing point for every civilization that was expanding, either east one time or west one time or whatever. So we are a people of many ethnic backgrounds.
Ambassador, I hear you defining Palestine as one huge geographical region.
No, it's not.
Are there defined boundaries?
Yes, historical Palestine or British Mandate Palestine, under the British, is 27,000 kilometers. We have made the brief decision in 1988. The PLO has made the brief decision that this conflict could not continue, and we thought to adopt the two-state system. And we have, in the peace agreement that we have signed, or the peace accords known as the Oslo Accords in 1993, put in black and white that we accept to share our historical land in a share of 78% Israel and 22% Palestine. So we have accepted 22% of our historical homeland in pursuit of a settlement to the conflict, and that we can move in to a tomorrow in which everybody can prosper and end the conflict.
Okay.
This area is demarcated not only in the Palestinian narrative. This is what the Security Council has approved as Security Council resolutions. This is the foreign policy of the United States. This is the foreign policy of the EU and its member states, Japan, China, Russia, Arab countries. Everybody who's involved in international relations accepts this reality that the 1967 borders is Palestinian territory. And that's why you hear the term Palestinian territory, to distinguish between where Israel stops and where Palestine starts. Now, since 1967, Israel has continued its occupation in defiance to Security Council resolutions. So we have now 56 years with an ongoing occupation, despite repeated UN Security Council resolutions, European Council declarations, Arab League calls, Arab League initiatives, our own peace agreement that was signed in 1993, in which we have put in black and white accepting Israel's right to live in peace and security under defined borders, within defined borders, and to revoke use of military means or violence as a means of solving the conflict. And that's why we went into a 5-year interim period of negotiations in which we were supposed to show that, while Israel is supposed through the 5 years to start rolling back its military forces from the Palestinian cities and whatever. I heard your previous speaker yesterday, the ambassador of Israel, saying that there is areas A, B, and C. Yes, this classification came on what is the first area that will be evacuated, which is like cities like Ramallah and Nablus and whatever. And then you had areas that are B, in which during this interim period, it was agreed that Israel will maintain the policing and preserving order, but the Palestinians will be immediately running the administrative role in the B areas. C areas, which are the furthest in the process, remained in the hands of the Israelis militarily and administratively.
Why?
Because they did not want to relinquish the territory immediately. They said, okay, we will divide it into 3 categories that we will be doing over the 5-year period. For us, we had trust in the international community's determination to see this process through. And 5 years in a conflict that has lasted for almost 100 years is not a very long time. And we were confident of our ability to provide a model that the entire world can be proud of in terms of governance and rule of law and so forth. So the time factor of 5 years to be tackling issues that have brewed over 100 years and the complications of disengagement between an occupation that has been so much entrenched and a newly established form of governance, and it required some time to handle that, especially that many things were on the table, like the 6 million refugees that have been expelled from Israel, from their properties, the issue of Jerusalem, how are we planning to divide Jerusalem, all of these issues were on the table, so we did not want to pressure ourselves in the time, and we accepted the 5-year model as a time frame for concluding this. Now what we are finding or as a reality is that Israel is now saying that, sorry, I can only give you the areas A, and I will keep 60% of the 22% that were the basis of negotiations.
Balozi, can I step in here and ask you, essentially what we're saying here is that there was an agreement, the 5-year period has elapsed.
In 1999, yes.
Yeah, obviously, a while ago. And we then saw, even after the elapsing of this 5-year period, where these agreements were made for the areas of occupation A, B, and C, administratively, Palestine then was supposed to take control, administratively. And then we would see that the involvement of Israeli army general in that area then was also supposed to cease over time.
That's true.
What we are saying now, according to you, is that since the elapsing of that 5-year period, 1999 until present day, there has been a back and forth over the agreements that were made in terms of what was supposed to happen. Both sides ratified these agreements. Am I understanding?
Yes.
Okay. And these were also then made in the presence of world bodies. We're talking about the Arab League, we're talking about the European Council. It was to the knowledge of the United Nations Security Council, as well as the United Nations in general. This was accepted.
That's very true.
Would we say now that the heightened, I want to call it tensions, but it's a lot more than that from what we've seen over the last 30 years, then beyond the 5 years, over the last 30 years has been because the agreements that were made over this 5-year period for the occupied lands then were broken? Is that the case?
Exactly that. And in the meantime, it's not only broken and people were living their lives normally or whatever. They were subjected to a horrible occupation regime of humiliation, deprivation of livelihoods, and killings on daily basis. This year alone, before the tragic events that we are witnessing today, we have 250 Palestinians killed since the beginning of the year. Nobody has heard of them. Nobody spoke anything about them at the hands of the Israeli army and the Israeli settlers in the occupied territory. 47 of them are children. So it's not an occupation that is just, observing from far away. Every aspect of Palestinian life is dominated by the Israeli military. Our officials, my president, if he needs to leave Ramallah to meet the Kenyan president, he cannot do so without the approval of the Israeli army. Every bottle of water that we consume, every medicine that we bring into our country goes through the Israeli system and is approved by the Israeli system. Our tax money, if I import a product from Kenya, it has to go through the Israeli ports. And I have to pay the Israeli government 3% of the customs of what I will regain in customs for that product for their administration, as their administrative cost for being my occupier and being the one who's responsible for allowing things in and out. And even that custom money, I don't get it automatically. It depends on the political will of the Israeli government. If they are happy with us, they transfer it. If they do not, it's withheld. As we are sitting now, $800 million of our tax money is withheld by Israel. $800 million.
In your opinion, because it's important, in your opinion, why does the Palestinian Authority believe that the Israeli government, army, and all its, agencies have held strong to the control to date?
Because this is the occupation project. It's a project. It's a political project. I'm sorry. The signatory of the Oslo Agreement, Prime Minister Ishaq Rabin, was shot, killed, assassinated by the Israeli Jewish right wing in 1995. They assassinated him. The person who signed with Arafat the peace accord was assassinated on the hands of the Jewish Israelis. The right wing, of course, from them. The people who are represented today in the government. Prime Minister Netanyahu, at no point in history has he shied away from saying that there are no rights for the Palestinians, there is nothing called the Palestinian state, will never relinquish territory for the Palestinians, and I'll make sure that there is no prospect for peace. He said it in his campaign. This is on TV, this is in Israeli print media, for anybody who wants to look a bit deeper. The Minister of Internal Security, the one who's responsible for managing the occupied territory in the Israeli government. He's a member of the Kach movement. Kach movement is classified in the American legal system as a terrorist organization. This is not my words. I have it all here in black and white and from international sources, so you can always refer back to it.
Yeah. Without ignoring, of course, because like you said, many things then did happen after the 5-year elapse in 1999. Many things have happened until 2023, and that's for sure. We have seen there have been uprisings, there's been conflict, there's been tension. Yes, there's been death, and the conflict continues. But come this weekend, we then saw action that was very different from what we had seen before. Many words have been used to describe it. It was planned. It was a terrorist attack on Israel.
Yeah.
We saw grotesque pictures and videos of the things that happened. What triggered this latest, these latest events over
56 years of occupation. It's basically 56 years of continuous occupation, day in and day out. We have been warning for now 2 consecutive years. My president in the General Assembly this year and the year before and the year before that asked explicitly, we call for international protection to stand between us and the Israelis, because the amount of Israeli atrocities that are taking place on daily basis in all cities, not only in Gaza, and East Jerusalem, in Nablus, in Hebron, in Jericho, and everywhere that the Israeli settlers protected by the armies exist, our people are suffering. Our people are prohibited from reaching hospitals, to schools, and these are not my words. Please refer to the reports of the United Nations in Palestine. You will find this in black and white and in video, all of these violations that have been taking place. This is brewing. The tragic events that have happened. Okay, there is nothing more to describe it than very tragic, very disturbing developments that took place. I can only blame Israel for it. I don't care who pulled the trigger, but who has been feeding for that incident to happen, or that event to happen, or these atrocities to happen.
Excellency, let me ask you this question. Are you saying that given what you've described as the horrors of Israeli occupation, are you suggesting or are you saying that it is the situation you've described that has enabled Hamas to grow and become what it is?
That's very true. The actions of the Israeli government over 56 years has been continuously radicalizing the Palestinian society. If you are a person who's humiliated on your way in and out of work, I don't think that you will develop to be a pacifist. If your house is being bombarded and every other year you have to bury people of your family or your children or whatever under the rubbles, you will not be a pacifist. If you are in the case of Gaza has been under full military closure for 17 years. Full military closure.
What does that mean?
that there is no bolt, there is no screw, there is no bar of chocolate, there is no biscuit that enters the Gaza Strip that is not allowed in through the checkpoints that Israel has approved, or the entry points that Israel has approved into the Gaza Strip.
For 19 years.
17 years.
17 years. Why did this start 17 years ago?
This is when Hamas was in control of the Gaza Strip.
Okay.
Israel has closed the entire Gaza Strip. Not that it has not done it under the PLO leadership or the Palestinian government's leadership. It has done it so, but it has thought, okay, we have now Hamas in power. This would give us a full control and a full excuse to do whatever we want and continue to be supported, of course, by Western governments. Now, anything that Hamas has done in the past few days that you have seen on TV, it has done under the full control of Israel, while they were under the full control of Israel, under the full surveillance of Israel. So basically, the message here is that military might and suppression is not the recipe for security and peace.
The region.
Or anywhere else. The border, the fence that separates the Gaza Strip from Israel, because you have on two sides it's Israel, and then you have the sea, and then you have the Egyptian border. On these two sides, the fence that Israel has erected, the latest technology, whatever, to stop any infiltrators, whatever, costing $4 billion. You have seen the images collapse. So basically, fences, technology, machine guns, warplanes are not the recipe for peace and security for anyone in Palestine or outside Palestine or in Africa or anywhere. It's good neighborly relations, respect of international law and applicability of international and accountability under international law. This is what brings mutual respect and good neighborly relations. There is an international law that governs Palestinians, Israelis, Kenyans, Italians, French, every country under the sun should be under the same yardstick of international law. Not countries with impunity can do whatever they want without being accountable under international law, not Palestinian will, but international law. That is the only recipe for peace and security.
Ambassador, what's the relationship between the government of Palestine and Hamas?
Well, we are at odds for a very long time because the Palestinian National Movement and the PLO basically and the Palestinian government have decided long time ago to adopt the legal fare with the occupation rather than warfare. We have chosen to battle this occupation in the international forum, in the General Assembly, in the Security Council, in the ICJ, in the ICC, in the Human Rights Council. These are the platforms that we have chosen to force this occupation out of our country and apply international legitimacy in Palestine.
Okay.
Hamas is a more radical group, and their take on things is very different. But they are not the government of Palestine. They do not represent the Palestinian people in any way. It's a group in Palestine, a part of the Palestinian fabric, which believes that tackling this occupation or fighting this occupation is best done through military means and fighting it back with arms.
So your differences are in the approach?
Definitely.
But not in the end goal?
No.
The end goal is to end what you call the occupation?
It's not what I call.
Israel.
This is what the Security Council called occupation, defined as occupation. This is what every government, including the government of Kenya, considers as a foreign occupation of Palestine. So it's not our perspective on things, that we believe we are occupied. No, this is what the international community unanimously, except of course Israel, agrees on.
Okay. Are you saying the Palestinian National Authority does not in any way condone any form of uprising against the occupation?
No, not uprising. The use of violent means against innocent civilians.
So violent
innocent,
uprising is what you're against. And this is by, how do you define violence? By use of arms?
Because uprising, okay, an uprising does not necessarily mean taking arms against the Israelis.
That's true.
I can go into a demonstration, that's an uprising.
Yes.
I can carry banners, or even throw stones or throw sticks or whatever, something that's happening in football fields all around Europe, and still people are not shot dead in the streets for that. So uprising is one thing, and violence against innocent civilians is another. We have repeatedly condemned, over many, many years, when any civilian Israeli has fallen. But while we were doing so, Israeli officials were bragging about how many Palestinians they were managed. This is on TV, this is in the papers, this is not, don't take my word for it, that they have to use force. Only yesterday we heard the Minister of Defense of Israel saying, we will cut water, we will cut food, we will cut electricity, we will cut petrol against these people. They are human animals. If you have a statesman using this is recorded, this is not my words, this is what the Israeli media has printed and has shown live on TV. If you have a statesman speaking about this, how do you think this will translate into the actions of the soldiers, of the settlers? This rhetoric.
It hardlines them. What is the relationship between the Palestinian National Authority and the people inside Gaza? They overwhelmingly voted for the Hamas leadership 17 years ago.
This is, yes, Hamas got the majority of the parliament. But 1 year earlier, the president won the elections also against other contenders.
Okay.
And this result was and will still and will also be happening in the future. It was a punishment vote. It was punishment against the failure of the peace process to bear fruits. If we promised, people were punishing the PLO and the Palestinian Authority and the Palestinian National Movement, that you have promised us in 1994 that the occupation is going to be over. Just bear with us until 1999, and you will live to see a sunnier day. This never happened. And in 2007, after another round of intifada, in which people were massacred in the streets and in holy sites and whatever, and with us, of course, we are an unarmed nation, okay, we're unable to stand in the face of this military might.
Right.
People were punishing us. If you, the one who came to sell me pacifism and coexistence and opening a new chapter with our occupiers, for over 12, 13 years, we have seen nothing but more destruction, more death, more loss of property and confiscation of land. Then I might go with the other route that these guys are promising, the hardline route, because we have tried you for 12 years.
So are you saying that there's a threat as well for the outcome of this current situation actually weakening the Palestinian National Authority's hold in Gaza? Because the same frustration...
everywhere. The actions of Israel has been radicalizing the Palestinian society day in and day out. It's easier for them to deal with radical movements than to deal with people who are promoting peace and an end, peaceful means as an end for the occupation. Because what argument can they tell the world at that time? We have been boycotted. We have been sanctioned as a Palestinian authority. Sorry, I heard your previous speaker, the ambassador of Israel, yesterday saying that we give them electricity and we give them water.
And opportunities to work.
I'm sorry. That water and electricity he's referring to, the Palestinian Authority has to pay for it. Israel sends the bill. So my occupier sends me the bill of what I'm consuming in water and electricity.
In my land.
In my land, to pay for it. And if I don't, they don't. Even the petrol that they are referring, nothing that is provided for free.
Your Excellency, I have to ask you this question. Has there ever been any government in Israel that the Palestinians have considered to be fair?
This is a very good question. We have been close to achieving a breakthrough in the deadlock through, of course, Prime Minister Olmert. We were very close, and we had very close consultations, and my President and Prime Minister Olmert were having a series of meetings in each other's offices and houses, but suddenly, out of the blue, the Prime Minister of Israel was removed from power. Prime Minister Rabin, the signatory of the was assassinated by the Israeli right wings.
In 1995, you see, this is it. It was at a peace rally.
Exactly.
Now, if you read the chronology of events and the history behind his assassination, there are those who argue, opinions differ on this, that it was for religious reasons. That the young man, a gentleman called Amir, 25-year-old at that particular time, felt he was actually following a religious order.
Yes.
He had this belief that someone who espoused the views that Rabin espoused was someone whom certain laws, what they call halakhic laws, allowed him to remove such a person.
Yes.
And during his trial, he even stated the same. Now, see where I'm going with this? He was clearly right-wing.
Yes.
The government in Israel right now is clearly right-wing.
Exactly.
If we look at Hamas, you could also argue they are right-wing.
Exactly that.
So now, you have two forces that are both extremists, to put it mildly. So what do we expect?
Exactly that. You put these ingredients together, this is the result that you were going to get.
Yeah.
No other result. When you had people in power in Israel, wiser, and were more interested in reaching a compromise and a solution, things were managed differently, and we did not have to clash or go into such tragic confrontations by any component in the Palestinian society. But when you have a right wing, as you rightfully said, government that sees no Palestinian on the land, we have the Minister of Finance saying that there is nothing called Palestinians, we are the Palestinians. Imagine in 2023, someone is saying that when you have two of the most prominent human rights organizations, Amnesty International and International Human Rights Watch, both issuing reports that what's happening in Palestine is apartheid by Israel. Apartheid in 2023.
But Your Excellency, do you know just how similar this is to the South African situation? Because Hamas represent what the ANC sometimes denied, sometimes accepted, called the spear of the nation. Because there was a wing in ANC who had decided these peace talks aren't getting us anywhere. A little armed conflict will get us somewhere. And they call themselves, I don't want to pronounce the name as it was because I will mispronounce it, the spear of the nation. Again, a situation where you are terrorized, you are confined, you are denied any freedoms within your own country, then arises an extremist group who believe, you know something, these talks aren't getting us anywhere. The young man who assassinated Rabin believed that the lands that the Palestinians occupied, him and people like him who had this belief, was the rightful place that Jews should have been living in. Now, when you have extremists who believe this, that this is their right. And yet they found people living there. And then you have another group. You see, I'm harping on this two extremists coming to meet. Where exactly do you hear the voices of people who are not extremists and who are saying...
Where are the moderates?
Exactly, because we all live here anyway. And none of us is going to go anywhere. So how do we get to a point where we live together?
Those moderates are many. Not, unfortunately, they are the most powerful in the societies on both sides of the current situation, at least. But, for example, the number one recorder of all Israeli violations that are taking place in the occupied territory against the Palestinian people are Israeli NGOs that are recording these violations. So it's not Palestinians against Israelis. It's radicals against non-radicals. People who are seeking peace and a peaceful solution through the peaceful means, through international mechanisms and international law, and people who believe that they are above the law and should take matters in their own hands. Unfortunately for us, the current Israeli government belongs to that group, and that's what makes this a very explosive recipe. Hopefully that it does not escalate to a much more damage.
But as you referred to, severally, you talked about, we see the pictures, we see it all, we hear the words that are spoken. Another thing that we heard over the last couple of days was, commentary from the world in terms of what had happened. What's your reaction to some of the things that we heard? From the African Union, we heard, a specific angle to this where the African Union said, look, some of the things that you speak of must be called out. Must be called out, and that was looking at the state of Israel specifically. We also then have seen support. Which you say if that support comes from the United States, okay, that's not too surprising because that's always been. But then there have been many calls for different things. The president of Kenya made a statement about the support that who they stand, or who the president and the country stands with. How does that resonate with you as you hear some of these?
For me, I read very carefully His Excellency the President's statement, and you cannot stop at the first two lines of the statement and consider this is only what he's saying. Kenya is a very responsible international actor, and they know very well what are the obligations of Kenya under international law. And for a president who has been calling very loudly for a law-based international order, I think His Excellency the President knows exactly where the problem is. Now we have seen a trend of international, let's say, friends of Israel in the West that have made very quick and very advanced statement beyond the limitations of international law in this. When we understand the reason, in the US it's part and parcel of their internal politics and their election campaigns, and who gets elected is the more whoever proves to be more close to Israel and serves Israel best. Not solely on internal merits or internal politics or internal economical policies merits, but Israel plays a very important role in that regard. This is the American thing to deal with, and Europe has the historical guilt. They're still trying to make up for an historical guilt that, I'm sorry, we Palestinians had nothing to do with it. We were the people who received the first waves of immigrants into our homes and into our villages and towns.
You welcomed them.
We had no issues. It's when the numbers became overwhelming, and then we started hearing Britain saying that I'll make a homeland for the Jews in Palestine, then we started worrying. But before that, nobody even complained about that.
So what do you say to them, Ambassador? In fact, let me read the statement. This is a joint statement by the President Macron of France, Chancellor Scholz of Germany, Prime Minister Meloni of Italy, Prime Minister Sunak of the UK, President Biden of the US, expressing their steadfast and united support to the State of Israel and their unequivocal condemnation of Hamas and its appalling acts of terrorism. They continue to say we make clear that the terrorist actions of Hamas have no justification, no legitimacy, and must be universally condemned. I'm going to skip some lines and go to part where they say, our countries will support Israel in its efforts to defend itself and its people against such atrocities. We further emphasize that this is not a moment for any party hostile to Israel to exploit these attacks to seek advantage. All of us recognize the legitimate aspirations of the Palestinian people and support equal measures of justice and freedom for Israelis and Palestinians alike. But make no mistake, Hamas does not represent those aspirations, and it offers nothing for the Palestinian people other than more terror and bloodshed.
Yeah, but, shrinking the entire conflict with all its complexities and over 100 years old in a 48-hour snapshot. This is exactly what this is. Unwavering support for Israel. Fine. In what? In committing war crimes? But this is basically what this is. Mm-hmm. I don't have a problem. As a Palestinian, you can support Israel as much as you want. It has nothing got to do with me, as long as it has nothing got to do with me. But are you supporting Israel? Unwavering support, limitless support to protect it in the international arenas. And when they commit genocide and war crimes that the ICC is looking into, you're still supporting Israel? But other countries are held to what they call to the letter of the law on every aspect that they do in violation to international law, but not Israel. This impunity should stop for the sake of everybody, not only for the sake of Palestinians. Put the Palestinians aside in this equation. If we weaken international law and its applicability, and we put some states above the law, this is a recipe for devastation.
Around the world.
Around the world. And we have seen this happening other places. Whatever. Why are some countries entitled to use force and being supported with military means to defend themselves, but not the Palestinians? We have to sit and wait until we see what Israel is willing to give to us. I heard your previous speaker saying, we tried to give them, we offered them 95%, and they did not take it.
Yeah.
You're offering me of what is mine legally, 95%, and I should cheer for it? Come on, Yani, please respect our intelligence and the audience's intelligence and whatever. You're not giving me what is yours. You're giving me what the law, the court, the International Court of Justice has said Israel has no right in any inch outside the 1967 borders. The European Council has said we will never recognize Israel or its settlements outside the 1967 borders. Security Council resolutions have said the same thing to the letter, and I have copies here from dependable
But here you are, Ambassador,
yes.
with all those, you're quoting the UN Security Council, you're quoting the European Union. The powerful states in those countries are these ones that are issuing a joint statement where they're offering unequivocal support to Israel. And you're questioning to what extent is this support. It sounds to me like you're at a corner.
We are at a corner, and this is why we're in a deadlock.
So what's your way out?
Our way out, without these countries changing their course into respecting international law and stopping these double standards in which they have been running affairs in the world, we will continue to see conflicts. I'm sorry, the conflicts are not only in Palestine. Every other day we're seeing a new problem somewhere else in the world.
Do I hear you to be saying, Your Excellency, that if we were to go by the statement that my colleague Eric has just read, that these very countries are abrogating the very things the Security Council and the UN have actually pronounced?
Exactly that, because the Security Council has asked countries like France, US, even Kenya, for certain measures. It's your obligation as a country, as a member of the society, It's run just like the same way that law is carried out inside a society. You are obligated by law to inform the police that the crime has been committed and who the criminal is, and to take action against it. If you give that criminal shelter or assistance or whatever, you are part of the crime.
Do you think that the state of Palestine, from what you've talked to us about this morning, has there been enough opportunity to give truth to the side of Palestine?
No, the mainstream Western media has made it very part of their mission, really, to block the Palestinian narrative. Facebook has been blocking Palestinian posts throughout the past 3 years. Western media always tackle the thing from Israel's right. Yeah, but Israel is a violator too. Israel definitely has a right to be living in secure and safety and prosperity, but within its confined borders. I'm going to ask you for a favor. To ask any Israeli official, be it the Israeli ambassador or anybody that you come across during your line of duty, to ask him what are the borders of Israel. Let him define to you what are the borders of Israel. They are not in the constitution of Israel. Israel doesn't have a constitution. It has a basic law and has no definition of the borders. The only country in the world that is allowed to exist without defined borders.
Ambassador, we thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you for coming and shedding light on what's happening in that region from this perspective of the Palestinians. Asante sana. Ambassador Hazem Shabat is the ambassador of the Palestinian government to Kenya, the state of Palestine in Kenya.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.